Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Founder Conversation. Today we're shooting again in the lovely CIC Ethos space, where we're going to be continuing our conversation with founders, builders, researchers, and operators that are shaping the future of technology here in Europe and across the world. Today we're joined by Justin Schenk, and he's going to be speaking with us today about some of his research and his thoughts about the future of AI and ethics and everything that's connected to that. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us today, Justin.
Thanks, Byron. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So maybe we'll start with a little bit about yourself. Maybe you could kind of give us a brief rundown of your background, what brought you to where you are now, doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from the States, long journey since then.
Mm-hmm.
I studied in Germany in Osnabrück, cognitive science, and I've been in Berlin for 6 years, working with tech startups, computer vision, machine learning. So and the past year I've been focusing on AI safety research and technical AI governance research. So looking at how do LLMs represent time in terms of like time horizons, and also how resilient are they to under pressure, so for like sycophancy, and also like how do they shift according to different personas that when people talk with them.
Fascinating. So why did you want to get into this area? Like why is this important to you?
I guess I've always been interested in the interpretability of deep neural networks. So it's the one thing to be able to say this predicted something to be a cat or a dog, and it's another to be able to explain why.
Yeah.
So it just seems natural to want to be able to read the internals of the model and kind of feel, okay, this is a judgment that we can rely on.
To not just get the information, but to know what the logic is behind how that information is coming to you as a user. Interesting. Was there a particular moment in your experience that kind of led you to where you are now?
Wow. It's been a lot of small steps, but I guess the biggest transfer has been coming from a neuroscience background. So when you're looking at the brain, biology, I mean, it's a wonderful thing. The life, the body is amazing.
Yeah.
And I think a natural wonder for the body and the mind translates pretty well to machine learning, actually. So it's a lot of nerds coming into this space right now.
But I'm guessing you already did a lot of research before LLMs were a big thing with neural nets, correct?
Yeah, actually, exactly. So I remember studying 2017 and someone saying, oh, transformers is going to be the next big thing. And this was way before.
Oh, was that like a Google paper, right? When they made that transformer paper, right?
Yeah, it's super impressive. They found a way to do translation in a way, higher order statistics on the internals of the model, and this seems to be where we are today.
So with your research, what's the problem that you're solving?
Yeah, sure. So if two people in different parts of the world are interacting with the same AI model, is it fair if they get the same response? It's not obvious that it is. And even if they get the same response, under what conditions do those responses change? So if you want to ask for information about like, how will this new law affect my rent price? How will this affect the price of eggs at the supermarket? And you ask the AI model, does it matter if you're coming from a background, certain background or another background? What kind of answer it should give you? So there's a lot of open questions here about what kind of world we want to live in, what kind of world we want to create, and AI gives us a chance to do very scientifically, but also in a very open way to have this conversation.
So as an example, like let's say you have some very strict rules about what kind of information like is okay to expose to the public about laws and safety and speech, for example, in some country, and then those rules are very different, maybe more liberal or maybe even more strict in some other country, but the LLM doesn't really know that. Like the LLM is just trained to do what it's trained to do, and it doesn't really discriminate much against the input unless the people in front of those LLMs put in some kind of extra filters and retraining depending on geolocation. I don't know if they even do that. Do they do that?
That's a good question. I don't know how much data they have access to. I know they don't have access to the timestamp. I went for a run. How fast was I? It'll make up something.
So on a societal level, like, why does this matter for people? Like, say I'm not working in the AI space and I don't have any stake in research or an AI-related business. If I'm just an average citizen, why do I care?
Trying to relate a lot of the scientific research, a lot of the AI safety research to the public comes down to like maybe understanding where does our information come from? How do we know that we can trust it? So that we call information integrity. And it's like if in the past we were able to trust Google search to give us information, or we were able to trust our library, or we were able to trust our elders in the community, however far back you go. Yeah. Like today we're having the same kinds of discussions, but about AI models. Like under what conditions and to what extent can you trust them for reliable information?
And it has just repercussions like for elections, for just society in general, right?
Yeah, even before LLMs, you mentioned Google just now. Like, if I remember correctly, like this was a fairly big deal in many of the elections, many of the recent elections, where lots of people got very vastly different Google results depending on where they are, what they wrote, what the metadata about their political leanings was. That was a thing, right?
Yeah. It's a bit of deja vu on that, actually. You remind me that, this discussion has come up before. So that part maybe not new. Maybe what's different is sort of the whole feedback loops. Mm-hmm. So when you're chatting with AI, you're not just getting a one-shot information. You're also kind of building more context. Yeah. So it does feel like, in a way, the stakes are a bit higher.
What do you think is something important about AI that most people don't understand who are using the technology, from your perspective?
So I probably have to think about it a bit more, but I noticed that like personalizing AI, treating it like a person, sometimes I find that surprising. I find it also from highly educated people, but I think it's important to remember it is a machine, and that there are limits to what machines can do, and it depends where you want to put the hierarchy of trust between humans and machines.
On that same thought about people personalizing LLMs, what are your thoughts on the whole idea of people always say the LLM is thinking or the LLM is reasoning? Like, how do you approach this problem nowadays?
I think it's useful for these anthropomorphizations, like to say the machine's thinking or reasoning. It helps to simply explain it. I think you can also go too far with the analogy. You can say like a company is like an organism. That's a useful analogy, but there are limitations to that analogy as well.
And how close do you think it is to truth when I go to ChatGPT and I type in something and then it shows up thinking? Like, how truthful is that statement when ChatGPT says it's thinking about something?
I'm interested what you think.
It's like my thoughts on it is that it's a bit misleading. Because you being an AI researcher, that they are just word generating machines. They look at words and then based on their language training, they predict more words. They are essentially dice rolling with very properly weighted dice and predicting more words. That's the way I see it. And I don't consider that as thinking. I think of that as very well weighted dice rolls. But I'm not an AI researcher, and that is my humble view of the situation. So how about you?
Yeah, certainly. It's predicting the next word, and you could say it in really maybe complex ways, but yeah, I wouldn't extend the analogy too far beyond that. And maybe one day we get to a point where it's doing something that's completely, beyond our understanding of how it's doing predictions. For personally, because I'm a biologist by training, I unconsciously circumscribe. I draw a line around certain words that I think only people do, or only animals do, or only life can do. And but for everyday use, you say like, the machine thinks. It means what does it do? It takes information or data in and spits information or data out. It's automated data processing. Right? So, but to call that thinking is fine. But I don't want to like diminish the value of like human experience by translating the words. And I wonder if there,
Yeah, do you think something's lost by doing that?
I do. I feel like there's a benefit to reserving certain words and ways of relating to people, to people.
Yeah, yeah.
And then, and I do think something is lost. Being someone who's lived in different countries, I recognize what people give up when they include me in conversations. So like when they include me in their society, like I'm honored by that, and I recognize there's something that they're giving up. What are we giving up? When we include machines in our like effective vocabulary.
So does that mean we are now on a stage where this whole word, this word of the AI is thinking, is essentially misleading people or training them towards something that is not true? Like, what do you think about this aspect of the problem?
I could see both sides of that. I could see that there's some people that are just so turned off by having to, sort of cheapen their vocabulary to include things that are, clearly computational. That people might be turned off by that.
Yeah.
And other people might say, well, that's the best way to include people actually in the conversation and not just, say it's computing, like matrix multiplication. So I could see both sides of that.
Maybe we need to invent a new word for it, though.
Yeah, I think it's a responsibility of the intellectuals, of AI researchers, to communicate their research in a way that is accessible to the public, or at least that keeps in consideration how it's likely to be affecting the public.
Interesting. So for founders who are building with this technology, why should they care about how and why, what their models are doing?
As long as they get the meaningful output.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I think if you're committed to any kind of principles about fairness, like how would you feel if you were on the other side?
Yeah.
Then
As a customer.
As a customer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I think you have a reason to care. But
Certainly.
if not, then I don't know.
The key problem that we're solving here then is people and people's principles and ethics. How do they correctly get managed by companies who are integrating these LLMs, then passing on some value to their customers, but then the customers have their own ethics and values, and how all of these very complicated connections can work together.
I'm in favor of transparency in research. I mean, like, you can go many levels for that. You could say, like, I don't do an experiment until I've already said what I think the hypothesis would be, but at the very least, you're publishing your research. So I think scientists, in some way, are way more accountable than a lot of other fields, because you're kind of required to show what the end result is. It's not perfect, and yeah, I'm not 100% a scientist. I also like other things. So I see that there's at least some accountability in the things that you put out there are visible to people, and they can be read. You can explain how you came to certain problems. People can ask you, how did you come to certain solutions?
But are OpenAI or Anthropic scientists? To me, they seem just, a for-profit organization. They don't seem like scientists to me, but they're the ones who are actually producing a lot of these models.
You can be a scientist working for industry.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess what the model I had in mind was more of like academic scientists. But yeah, you can definitely do high integrity research within a company. But honestly, I've never worked in such a company like Anthropic where I can tell you what the processes are like. I don't know what kind of issues they face. I do know that like academics, like the one benefit of it, for all the downsides of the lifestyle, is that you can live in a fully open life in terms of sharing what you discover, sharing, communicating a lot of the results, and potentially, like presumably, for the benefit of the public. That's kind of rare nowadays in a lot of fields. So.
But they actually are producing the models that you are also researching, right? Like you are checking, for example, these ChatGPT or Claude models, how do they respond to different people around the world in different situations? If you find some problems, so what's next?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're successful in pointing out, hey, here's a failure mode, like Center for AI Safety Institute, KC, they published recently this one showing a lot of the bias of the models, male versus female, black versus white, liberal versus Democrat. They made a really good study. It's well communicated, and they proposed some solutions for it. And those solutions could likely be taken up back by the labs. So that's one like potential success story. The AI Security Institute in London is doing similar stuff. they're putting a lot of pressure back on the labs based on what they find, and they're able to also sort of build an ecosystem where the public communicates things they don't like. These institutes, they can review, find experiments, find ways to give proper feedback to the frontier labs, and that goes on. So yeah, I think you can still have integrity along this chain.
From your perspective, how does today's environment feel compared to 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
Long before the transformer model came around, and the landscape has changed.
Yeah, it sure has. Like when deep learning was like AI, that was 5 years ago. So yeah, it's very interesting to hear. I feel a bit of loss that the term itself, like it went from being something that I thought I understood really well to something that's now generally thrown around by people that I have little in common with, so okay. But that's cool. And yeah, I mean now also there's a negative backlash against it. So I'm coming from a very like technical interest. I like technology, I like science. And now I see that there's a lot of uses that are concerning to the public. Like I don't know if we have to name them. So how those kinds of things get communicated. Now I feel like I've kind of pulled into this discussion. Yeah. So I mean I have a privilege to have a technical background, to understand a bit about what's happening with, technologically, and I have a responsibility to interface with the public.
Let's talk about those concerns of the public in regards to AI. Like, what do you think they're legitimate?
Same way the Google things were legitimate. Like, is Google biased when it's giving you biased information? Like, at least I'm more aware of the risks and challenges now in my current position than I was 5 years ago, for sure. And also maybe it's being a little more mature and being less riding the wave a little bit less than I was 5 years ago.
When you think about the next 5 years, what excites you the most about the potential for this technology in the future?
I was really optimistic about education a couple of years ago when ChatGPT just came out, because it's like obviously now everyone's got access to the best teacher or best coach. I haven't looked closely into how this is being deployed, but and now I'm looking at some of the risks in the civic area. I could imagine sort of more conscious leadership of technology could be a positive thing. I think maybe reducing some of the uncertainty for a lot of people, both the business people worried about a bubble, and the ordinary people trying to make ends meet.
Yes, I was wondering, so who are going to be these conscious leaders then who will inform their followers, the public, that this is the way we should employ LLMs?
I think you can point to government, say only government has the incentives. Right now, only government has the incentives to make sure that our rights are met. Businesses have different incentives, or maybe to another extent they want us to continue thriving so that we can pay for the services. But I think I've become a little more optimistic about the potential for governments to take accountability, and I don't know what that looks like.
You've become optimistic?
A little more optimistic, because I see that there's nothing else there that's going to catch us.
No other guardrails, you mean?
There's community, there's business, and there's government, and I don't know.
But it doesn't seem like it's been doing enough, or that government is really aware to the extent that you are of what they should be concerned about and the implications for society as a whole, right? Like, at least
I don't know like the details of how what makes government wake up, but I think like these institutes that I mentioned, Casey and AC, those are the two that I'm paying more attention to. I see at least they have some kind of mandate to do things that are responsible. They're accountable to the public, so that's something that I'm seeing more optimistically lately.
And then in a sense, it's mostly like it needs to be driven from the public. The public needs to be demanding more accountability from their governments and in regards to this technology.
That would be an implication, I don't know exactly how to channel that kind of information. And it's Case, not Casey, but so yeah, that's a good question. Like what kind of feedback to the government is going to be most effective?
Well, that still remains to be seen, but let's assume government for whatever reason, cannot deliver. Things just keep deteriorating, you know, so the bubble bursts, lots of financial issues and whatnot. You already mentioned, I think, one important point there, which is governments and community. How can I build a community that's more resilient to the future issues?
There are good examples of, you know, communities that put regulations within their space. I mean, I grew up in a fairly religious Christian house where there was, you know, sort of strict rules about what kind of media we could consume, and that was generally shared among people in that religious community. So I think you could expect similar kinds of regulations to similar types of feedback to occur for people in various in non-religious contexts.
But in local communities.
Yeah, it could also be local communities. I mean, it's like an extreme example would be is if a company opened a city and said, like, whoever wants to come live in this city, you know, will have the rights of a citizen in the city, and the company is going to be the government. A less like extreme version would be just simply like we all agree, like, okay, Berlin is now, you know, we have Berlin rules.
How would you organize that? Some kind of network of people who just decide one day, like, hey, we Berliners have our own Berlin network where we're going to decide how we're going to act and behave.
Yeah, honestly, I can't imagine. I think it's really difficult to imagine any radical change that's going to lead to something better than where we are today for most people. Like the current system, it's got a lot of flaws, the bureaucracy and all that. But they say the only thing saving us from the bureaucracy is the bureaucracy itself.
So then what keeps you optimistic about the future?
People like you guys. I mean, so like people asking questions and yeah, just like ordinary human emotion.
That's what makes us human. Yeah. What's an unpopular opinion that you have about AI?
Yeah, I think the one I shared about this kind of like aversion to the anthropomorphization of AI, that it can be useful and it makes it easy to understand each other and communicate, but I do feel like something a bit is lost, like calling machines sentient. I'm so far from like seeing them as like feeling pain, and who knows what could come up in the next 10 years, but yeah, I do think something is sacred about life, and that's, if I've got to plant my flag somewhere, that's where I would be.
Spoken like a true biologist.
What would need to happen for you to agree to classify these things as sentient? I'm just curious, like, what would need to be the threshold that they would need to pass?
How I understand how we label things, it's a lot of projection. Like, how do I know that you're sentient? How do you know I'm sentient? We learn implicitly through our experiences, and then we have a label for it, boom. So we could put that label on other things, and I think, like, for example, every child that sees a bike out in the cold knows, out in the rain knows that it's cold. It's like you have this intuition from childhood. Yeah, I think I could imagine a world where it's preferable to feel this way, to feel this intuitive way, that other things feel like us. The more animated they are, the more they're causal in our lives, the more that we relate with them. But yeah, for now, I guess I'm traditional and just like saying, like, if we lose the specialness of life, like what else do we have?
If you were going to give a message to educators or people that were teaching children or young adults about AI and safety, what do you think would be a powerful message?
Yeah, as you, the parent, I'd be interested in what you think. Like, I think not having kids, I haven't gone through the social media debates in the same perspective. The older I get, the more I start to take seriously, like, what are the effects on society? So I'd be interested in what you think.
So, I mean, me personally, my children were born and raised in Japan, and they were attending a Waldorf school. And so despite the fact that I'm working in this industry with this technology, I'm of the mind that at least in early childhood, I think they benefit greatly for not being exposed to not just AI, but just any kind of technology, like early on. But that is not a commonly shared belief among most people who work in this technology. That being said, there comes a point where, you know, we want to educate them so they're prepared to deal with this technology on a daily basis, because it's no doubt going to be a very important part of their lives. I'm curious if you had any thoughts on the matter. Yeah.
I can barely mediate my own technology consumption, let alone someone else's.
We constantly keep talking, you know, I, your opinion, my opinion, your opinion, and such. Tell Like, tell me more about your institute and your team. Like what is it like on a daily basis? Like the challenges you're facing, like the challenges that get brought to your table, to your institute, and how your team address it and go about like actually solving these complicated problems that get handed to you and your institute, or you yourself discover and identify as problems that you want to solve.
Point of clarification that we're still early stages, so we just started with labeling a name for our research team, Horizon Research, and yeah, we intend to continue researching. I was fortunate to be able to be connected with other research fellows through the Accord of Democracy. It's an online fellowship program, so people who are also interested in this topic of civic reliability, benchmarks, and how do we stress test the AI systems? So I think like one thing we all would like to do is continue working together. It's a nonprofit focus, so we're going to be relying on funding, and hopefully we find something that we can bring to light that's valuable to the public, and then also gives us more to work with. I'm expecting the next couple of years technology is increasingly going to be like real-time models that are interactive. It's something that we currently have turn-based models. Within a year or two, these models will be interactive.
So I think that's a good place to leave it. Justin, I want to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today about your experience and the challenges and your perspectives on this technology as it's changing so rapidly. For everybody that's watching at home, we'll put information about your organization in the notes of the video. So please check it out if you're interested in his research. And of course, please follow us and continue to join our journey as we talk to other interesting people and founders and operators, researchers, and movers and shakers in the AI space. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good luck.
Thank you
for your time.